resilience is quite an intangible thing that's hard to measure. So I wanted to ask how you gauge success. Maybe Chris, I'll come to you first on that.
Yeah, so I think in terms of the OEMs and manufacturers that I speak to, and obviously we'll hear from Marion on this then, but I mean, I think there's a couple of ways. I mean, you don't know what you can't measure. And on the one hand, one aspect of this is what you've mitigated and avoided. So you want to see, okay, what did I not lose in production? I've spoken to some OEMs who maybe they saw a supplier go down and for whatever reason anticipated losing, let's call it 40,000 units by when, and managed to only lose 10, right? So here we've already can see I have saved 30,000 units or whatever what numbers might be. But there's other metrics I think you might look to, like time to recovery. How much quicker did operations get back to normal production? Certainly premium freight costs, expedited freight costs might be another metrics that you look at to say, okay, did we manage to reduce this? On the other hand, expediting material can be a kind of resiliency flex, right? If you needed to avoid a wider disruption, then you would have done that. And so, not to say that it's one simple metric alone, but I think naturally it will come down in part to those financial figures you can track. Mm-hmm. So for example, how quickly could you convert your working capital inventory back into cash? So these are harder metrics, or let's say hard metrics you can to a certain extent measure. And I think there's others which are probably harder too, but in between that you need to get that picture of it. But that's broadly speaking some of the more concrete ones that I would think, but I'm much more interested in some ways to hear what Marion thinks about how she would be measuring those.
No, I like what you were saying. You cannot know what you can't measure, and it's also measure what matters, right? So really think about what matters most to your organization, which again might be different for different organizations. But I think the time to detect, time to decide, and time to recover that you were also mentioning, right? When you have an incident per incident, where you then have to set yourself goals. So you need to measure them over historically over some time, and then set yourself goals. Then I think, again, how we are also doing it, we have a resilience score, which is considering all our suppliers, and we want to improve that resilience score that we're measuring over multiple categories, or at least not go down from that resilience score. And of course, again, we measure that over the time, and we see that, and we hope with our active supply base management, we can improve this resilience score by, again, having the different dimensions, but also looking into or having clear goals of which suppliers we're bringing newly into the landscape, right? So we have a threshold to come in that is already at a high resilience, because we don't want to bring in low resilience suppliers into our supply chain. And then, of course, the entire system would, of course, suffer.
Yeah. No, those are great points. And yeah, make me think, maybe to add, Megan, exactly on other metrics like Marion talked about, we've heard more about supplier scorecards in areas. So if you take cyber, for example, like that might be an area to have a specific cybersecurity scorecard to understand how vulnerable a particular supplier might be to attack. And of course, those attacks could come from so many different ways. It can come from a phishing email. It could come from a plant vulnerability. But there are active ways to try. And then obviously, if you have the playbook that can follow that, then that's an important point. So I like what you said there, and I absolutely can see that across other parts of the supply chain as well.